Joining me now is Palestinian journalist and peace activist Aziz Abu Sarah. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Brittany.
Of course, as we know, I just want to set the scene here. We are 3 days out after Hamas launched an attack on Israel from the air, land, and sea over the weekend. This was the deadliest attack Israel has seen in decades. So first, can you explain to the audience exactly what Hamas is?
Yeah, Hamas is started just before the first Intifada. It's an Islamic organization. It's a radical organization that was started to fight Israel mainly. In its beginning, a lot of its work was actually internally, working against other Palestinian organizations, including Fatah, what eventually became also the PLO. And then with time, it has mainly focused its work on fighting Israel, including suicide bombings and the recent attack you just mentioned. Today it controls Gaza. It's been controlling Gaza for the last 17, 18 years, which important to say because I hear about this a lot in social media. It's not controlling Gaza through democracy. It's not through elections. There hasn't been any elections in any Palestinian cities in the last 17 years.
And can you explain to us the relationship between Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, and the Palestinian people in general?
It's a very contentious relationship between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, as they both compete over who would rule the Palestinian people. That's partially why we don't have any elections. After the elections in 2006, the last elections we Palestinians had, the Hamas and the PA or Fatah, they ended up in a civil war. Basically, Hamas took over the Gaza and Fatah took over the West Bank, and since then the relationship between the two has been very, very contentious. With the Palestinian people, it's a little tricky because the Palestinian Authority is known to be extremely corrupt, and a lot of people back in 2006 voted for Hamas because they were hoping for something less corrupt. That's not necessarily what ended up happening. With the lack of political progress in the West Bank, and with Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas being unable to really deliver on any of the promises he gave Palestinians, a lot of people turned toward Hamas. And in some ways, that's why Hamas got some support for its action this week, as gruesome and as horrific they are. They got some support because some people at least feel, well, there hasn't been any movie through peaceful means, so the heck with it. That's some of the mindset.
So are you saying some people in Palestine are supporting Hamas and these attacks? What are other people saying? Is there anyone there who is saying this was heinous, this was horrible, denouncing these attacks?
Absolutely. I'm Palestinian, and I think these were heinous, horrible, awful. There's no justification for killing innocent civilian people. And I can assure you, I'm not the only one. I've talked to friends, I've talked to people I know who also feel the same way, who are heartbroken. Look, many of the people who've been killed are people who work with us, people who are pro even Palestinian rights, people who out protesting with Palestinians, people who, one of the hostages I know personally who's worked, I think worked for Palestinians more than some of our politicians. So it's, to me, crazy to think that attacking civilians, going into people's homes, killing people in their homes, taking civilians, people in their 70s and 80s, hostages in Gaza as an act of resistance. I don't believe it's an act of resistance, and I think a lot of people don't. But there are people who are lost hope. And I think when people lose hope, they lose vision. They lost hope, they lost sight, and they look at what happened as, well, we living through hell, so now Israel lives it through hell. And this mindset that if I'm suffering, I'm going to make you suffer. That's my victory. It makes me feel better if I make you suffer. It's an awful thing. And unfortunately, now, as you read the news, you read social media, is how everyone seems to be thinking. we need to make the other side suffer more. That is no victory. There is no victory in death. There is no victory in killing civilians.